Should skateboarding be a college sport? And if so, what would it look like? Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel all about skateboarding where I like to talk about skateboarding in all of its forms. I have some questions to answer today. These are all submitted by going to radratvideo.com and submitting them through the form on the homepage. And Jason has a question. He says, why don't most public skate parks have bathrooms for the public to use? There has been more than a few times I've tried to tweak a steezy stalefish and pooped my dickies. Football fields, soccer fields, pretty much any sports park you can think have at least porta potties. Why does no one seem to care about the bowel health of skaters? Also, will pooping before a session help me ollie higher due to my decreased weight? If my calculations are correct, it will reduce my weight at least as much as Indy Hollows. Fantastic question, Jason. I actually did a mini research project on this before. You know how I like to go into detail and do some research and look up facts and figures and come up with some math on how all of this stuff works. Well, I did this one in about 2008. So my only regret with that one is that me and Tony didn't know that the other one did this too. So that kind of spoiled it a little bit. But yeah, I was getting into, that's just like a cut. It's very simple, but I was really getting into trying to do like effects and make cool things like that. In theory, sure, you would ollie a little bit higher. But to answer your question, that is the case here too. If you go to somewhere where people can play tennis and, baseball and all kinds of stuff, there's bathrooms, public bathrooms, parks even have bathrooms in them. Skate parks, no. And the only reason I could think of is like, imagine the kind of people who hang out at skate parks. And I don't necessarily mean the skaters. I mean like the kids who don't have anywhere to go after school, so they just hang out and they like drink and imagine the state of those bathrooms. Like you'd have to get them like power washed every single day. I can only imagine. And I just think that's probably it. Like they think, well, if there's a tennis court, it's not teenagers. It could be kids with a teacher. It could be, for school, and there's all kinds of adults and chaperones and stuff like that. And so the bathrooms are probably not going to get destroyed as much. But at a skate park, I bet that's why. But you are right that is the case, and it really sucks for anyone. Like, come on, you got to get in the car and go somewhere to go to the bathroom so you can go back and skate some more. It sucks. All right, the next question is from Bennett, who says, do you think freestyle skating elements could make a return in street skating? Watching any part by Rodney Mullen is as mind-blowing today as it was back in the day. Truly some of the most fun skating to watch. I think it definitely could. And it's just really weird because if you ever see someone do freestyle, it's like, oh, is this the next Rodney Mullen? He's doing some of that Rodney Mullen stuff. It's a whole category of skating. Sure, he dominated it when he was in it, professionally and doing all the competitions and stuff like that. But it doesn't belong to him. And so I feel like that's kind of the reason why it doesn't happen as much. If someone did normal street part in every type of way, and they did a truck stand, it'd be like, oh, Rodney Mullen. People don't say that for kick flips and ollies and 360 flips and things like that, which are also his tricks. But I think that's why. I think it's just like you don't want to look like you're trying to rip off someone else. But that got me thinking, because skateboarding is very advanced now. There's all kinds of tricks people don't know where tricks came from, who invented something, even if it's named after somebody, that doesn't mean they were the first one to do it. So like if you do a 5-0 grind, who are you stealing that from? There's a million people who did a pivot in a pool and went a little bit faster and slid, kind of, like sure, someone did it first, but no one feels like you're ripping someone off by doing that. But if you do someone's signature trick, then you're just kind of being a jerk. But at some point, every trick was someone's signature trick. Someone was the first one to grab in a certain way, and then at the next event, all the vert pros were doing that new grab. Like there's nothing wrong with taking tricks that people have done before and adding them into your lines and things like that. So there'd be nothing wrong with doing a Casper slide in a part. It doesn't mean you're stealing that, So I think that's it. I think it's just very much because of the games. I think, he was the only guy who was in the games, who, when you unlocked his stuff at the end, you would see him do this crazy freestyle stuff. That's Rodney Mullen stuff. Everyone else does all this street or vert. This is his thing. And I just think that you have to get past that. To see more people doing that type of stuff, you would have to not have every comment under it being, wow, Rodney Mullen stuff. So I think it's possible, it takes a bunch of people who don't care to just make it more normal. If you see everyone do a little bit of freestyle stuff here and there, it would eventually just become a normal thing again. But I think that there's that hurdle to get through. All right. Next question is from Al, who says, why do a lot of skaters, pros included, only nick the end of the rail when grinding? Happens more so when flipping in or out, but they basically bonk the end of the box or the rail instead of getting on and actually grinding. Is this done to make the trick easier, or is it a style statement? I think it's more of a speed thing. So if you see someone do a grind, and then they're about to do a trick after that, they're trying to do, there's a part by Eric Costin, I think, that comes to mind, where he's skating at this school. He does a grind, and then he pushes over here, and he goes around, and he jumps up and clears a table or something like that. And like, if he did a really long grind, he would land slow. Then he's got to push and push and push and push to get up speed for the next trick. But if you've got speed going, pop in, grind quick, and then you can just kind of keep going. You can flow into the next trick more, without having to make it an obvious thing. You didn't land slow and have to get going again. So I think speed is most of it. The only skater I could think of who doesn't really bother with that is Chris Haslam. And there's more, I'm sure, but he's the first one that came to mind. And he, I couldn't find this clip. I swear it was him. It may not have been. But he did a front board nollie big spin late flip, or like a nollie gazelle or something like that out. So he like popped up onto the ledge, and then he popped the nose, right? And so he slid, he pops, and he lands going so slow. Like they had to cut before he stopped. And I can find some clips where he lands pretty slow. And I'm not trying to critique that. Like the tricks that he's doing are incredible. And it's fine to land slow if you've used all of your speed doing multiple grinds in one combo, But I just think that that's not as stylish for some. Like they would prefer to start fast, land pretty fast, instead of start fast, land crawling slow. So, I think that's why there are people who do really long grinds. Tori Pudwell comes to mind with his back tails. You can slide it like a quarter mile, so like you do see that stuff, but I think for the most part it's just speed, just to try to make it look more smooth. All right. The next question is from Patreon. It is from S43803. That is his name. It was on his birth certificate. He faxed me a copy of it for proof. All right. Could it be that the Olympic Games are an alternative stage for unknown pro skaters who are not part of the selected few in the Californian epicenter of the skate industry and skate media? I think that the skaters who are supposedly the best are actually all just the skaters who have the most media coverage. They are chosen in a small part of the world, the west coast of California. Either they need to be right there present, or be of the few industry people from the inner center. What? 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 Not sure about the phrasing on that, but like you have to be there for people who are in the industry to see you and give you coverage. But in the Olympics, it's a good way to actually find out who is the best, less influenced by skateboard media. All right, so I went to Venice Beach in February, and it was really interesting to me because I saw how true that was. I was on foot the whole time. So like I got to the hotel, didn't have a car, just walked. That was it. The amount of skate spots I saw was ridiculous. I met up with Andy Anderson, and he was like, oh, that's there's this, and oh, that spot with all the gaps, and then there's a little, yeah, that's like right over there. Hey, let me show you this, and it's right over here. It like all of this stuff, famous skateboarding spots, are all right next to each other. If you look up skate park, so like sometimes when I make the thumbnails for the channel, I want a skate park in the background. I'll cut something out and put it on top of it. If you ever just look up an image of skate park on like a stock site, it's always the skate park in Venice Beach. Like there's so much skateboarding stuff that is all right there. So yeah, if you think about it, like it's who's the best in this specific spot, who you're going to see most. And like that's been changing, of course, because you don't have to like be filmed professionally. You can film yourself. You can have your buddy film you. You can get really good footage and get coverage via Instagram and stuff like that. But like that, there is something to be said for that. Especially back in the day, if you watch some of my who was it? I think it was Chad Muska. He grew up in Arizona, I think. Although, I mean, this is the same story for a bunch of pros. To ever get noticed, to get sponsors, and to get all this stuff, they had to move to California. It was the only way. For some people, they can't. There's stuff with their family. They're for some reason, they just can't do it. They're in college. They're trying to have a backup. They're not trying to just go all in on skateboarding. So they can't move to California. There's probably been, I'd say 60% of the best skaters in the world, potential best skaters in the world, you've never seen before. Like I used to really be a fan of old, like it was old. It was a long time ago. I used to buy tapes from like brands you haven't heard of, and sometimes you would see ridiculous skating, and it's like, well, if this guy was in the right place at the right time, everyone would know his name, but he wasn't. He lives in the middle of the country somewhere, and his buddy has a camcorder, and they just work on this small brand sometimes. But there's a lot of talent out there who has not gotten coverage because they're not from the right place, So I do think that is true. And having something where every country sends people, well, you're going to see people you haven't seen before. There was a documentary on that, which I found pretty interesting. So I do think you're right. I think it's going to change as things go on. But at some point, if you're going to be a pro skater, you're never going to be a pro skater who's never been to California. You're probably going to go there and film sometimes, and it's easy to see why. I was there in February. I got a sunburn. It was like 3 feet of snow here, so it makes sense why it's California, but I do see your point. All right. The last question is from Liam, who says, I'm going into my freshman year of college, where most of my friends will be playing some sort of Division III sport at our school. Would there ever be a way for skateboarding to be a college sport, like with its own contest circuit? Could colleges have skateboarding teams, like skate shops do? I know contest skating is debated in itself, but it was a random idea I thought of. Thanks. So here's the thing. If you were to be at a college level skateboarding event, that would mean that there's high school. There would be high school skateboarding events that colleges could go scout from and, give scholarships to the best skaters to be on their teams. Like, there would have to be a high school skateboarding circuit. And I could see some issues with that. It could be kind of cool, but, all right. So, my friend's son is 7 and he is in a skateboarding league type of thing. It's just at the skate park. They bring in some of the parents. I mean, if you want, I guess you can watch all their contests and things like that. And so they're kids. And so like their run would be like drop in on the bank, roll up this one, come back down fakie, step off because they can't turn around yet. Pick up the board, run up to the top of this ramp, drop in on this one. Things like that. Just turning over things, riding up and then riding back down, stuff like that. And then there's two teams and they score each run. And so whichever team has the highest score will win, and they don't win anything. It's just, it's just like for fun. But then there's a best trick. And the thing was, there was a kid who would drop in on something, pretty big thing to drop in on. And that was it. That was his best trick. And he would win all the time. There were kids who would drop in on a quarter pipe, rock to fakie, and they'd get less points. And some of the parents, well, like 3 of them, were getting kind of upset because a rock to fakie is a lot harder than just dropping in. And I don't mean dropping in. I mean inching your way on top of a bank until you roll in, not an actual drop in even, just rolling into a bank. And that was consistently scoring higher than a rock to fakie. And we're like, well, what's going on with this? That's obviously harder. He's coming in backwards and not catching his wheels. Picture trying to judge that as a high school gym teacher. This is your job, is to judge the high school skateboarding event. That would be really hard if you don't know anything about skateboarding. So I could see some concerns with that. I could also see a lot of concerns with home court advantage. So, the really fancy schools, very rich, they might have an indoor skate park, right? They could build a skate park indoors in the school. The gym has a door you can open, and then there's a skate park out there. Another school might have a couple of ramps that they built, and they put them in the parking lot where it's all gross and cracked up and all that kind of stuff. So imagine having to compete. You have to travel to go compete. And at this school, you're from the school where everything's terrible, and you go to the amazing skate park school. Well, they're all going to be really good because they can train in the best sort of environment. They can train indoors all year. You can only train when it's nice out, and that wouldn't really be fair. Or what if one school decides, we're going to make our ramps a bit steeper. And so if you're from the school where all the ramps are steep, all the other schools' parks are going to seem kind of easy. If you're from one of the mellow ramp schools and you go to that steep school, you're not going to be able to do anything. Or what if your school has a really weird ramp? It's got it's got kind of a curve, but it's a bank, and then it suddenly gets steeper, but that part curves too, and then there's a lip on it. Maybe you learn some tricks on there. No one else can do anything on that because they're skating it for the first time, So unless there's a standardized skate park at every school, you couldn't do it. And there's no way there's going to be a standardized skate park at every school. And you're not going to do flat ground only because no one's going to want to watch it, at least at the thing I was talking about, the kids are dropping in on ramps and they can do a whole run of climbing up on stuff and dropping in. If it was, hey, flat ground only, maybe they do an ollie and then they fall a couple of times. So it would have to be ramps. It would have to be a skate park, but you can't get every high school in America to build one. So I don't think it's possible. And if high schools aren't going to do it, for it to become a college thing, sure, I guess it's possible. If every college decided to build an identical skate park, and you could send in your sponsor me tape when you try to get into a college, and they could pick you to be on their skateboarding team, it could happen. I don't think it will. So that is it for now. If you have any questions, go to radratvideo.com and submit them through the form on the homepage. I always appreciate it. Even if I don't answer your question, I at least look through it. Sometimes it's something I'm just not an expert on. So I appreciate that. If I haven't answered yours, you can send another one. I'm not mad at you if I didn't pick it. But that is it for now. I'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out.